The crisp mountain air did little to cool the sting of rejection that clung to Alara, like a second skin. Her own family, the people who were supposed to love her, had deemed her useless. Born with a limp, she was considered a burden, an unmarriageable girl who consumed resources without contributing enough. So, they sold her. For a handful of coins and a promise of one less mouth to feed, they handed her over to a traitor. Her future as bleak and uncertain as a winter storm. The traitor, a gruff man named Silas, saw no value in her beyond the meager price he paid. He planned to sell her indenture in the next major town, a fate that felt worse than death. The journey was grueling. They traveled through dense, unfamiliar forests, the path rugged and unforgiving. Alara's limp, a constant reminder of her supposed inadequacy, ached with every step. Each night, she huddled by the meager campfire, the loneliness a cold, heavy blanket. She was just another piece of cargo to Silas, something to be offloaded for a small profit. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in shades of bruised purple and orange, their small party was ambushed, not by bandits seeking riches, but by a massive, angry bear, likely a mother protecting her territory. Silas and his men scattered in panic, their bravado evaporating in the face of raw, natural power. In the chaos, Alara was knocked to the ground, her ankle twisting painfully beneath her. She cried out, but her voice was lost in the roars of the bear and the terrified shouts of the men. Then, everything went silent. The bear was gone. Silas and his men were gone. Alara was alone, injured, and stranded in the heart of the wild mountains. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her. She tried to stand, but a searing pain shot up her leg. She was truly helpless. Tears streamed down her face as she looked into the encroaching darkness. Was this it? Was this where her sad, short life was meant to end? Lost and forgotten, a casualty of indifference. As she began to lose hope, a figure emerged from the shadows of the tall pines. He was a large man, dressed in buckskin and carrying a hefty axe over his shoulder. His beard was thick and untamed, and his eyes, though wary, held a spark of something she hadn't seen in a long time. Curiosity, not pity. He moved with a quiet confidence that spoke of a life lived in harmony with this wild place. "You're a long way from any town," he said, his voice a low rumble, like distant thunder. It wasn't accusatory, just a statement of fact. Alara flinched, expecting him to be like the others, to see her as a problem. I was left behind," she managed to stammer, her voice trembling. The man's gaze fell to her injured ankle, and his expression softened with a flicker of concern. He didn't ask what happened or who she was. He simply knelt, his large frame seemingly gentle. "You can't stay here. The night brings cold and predators." He looked around, his eyes scanning the forest as if reading a familiar book. "My cabin is close. I can help you." Without waiting for a reply, he carefully scooped her into his arms. Alara was so light, so frail. It was as if he were lifting a bird with a broken wing. She was too stunned, too exhausted to protest. Being held felt strange. She couldn't remember the last time she'd experienced human touch that wasn't rough or dismissive. This man, this stranger of the mountain, was treating her with a care she'd never known. His name, she would soon learn, was Kale. Kale carried her aficionata through the darkening woods, his steps sure and steady over the uneven ground. The journey was a blur of shadows and the rhythmic sound of his breathing. He didn't speak, and the silence was comforting, not. It was a silence filled with the sounds of the forest, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the distant gurgle of a stream. Finally, they arrived at a small clearing. In the center stood a sturdy log cabin, smoke criterios from its stone chimney, a warm, golden light glowing from a window. It looked like the safest place in the world. He gently set her down on a simple, handcrafted chair inside. The cabin was rustic, but impeccably clean and organized. Furs were draped over a bed in the corner, tools hung on the walls, and a fire crackled merrily in the hearth, chasing away the chill. Cale moved with quiet efficiency, fetching water and clean rags. He examined her ankle with surprising gentleness, his large, calloused hands careful and precise. "It's a bad sprain, but not broken," he announced, his voice calm and reassuring. He expertly wrapped it with a poultice of herbs he negacios from a wooden box. The cool mixture soothed the fiery pain almost instantly. He then handed her a precocious bowl of warm stew. It was rich with meat and vegetables, the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. As she ate, she watched him. Cale was a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He had saved her, tended to her injury, and given her food and shelter without asking for anything in return. For the first time in her life, Alara felt safe. She wasn't a burden or a piece of property. In the eyes of this lonely mountain man, she was simply a person in need of help. The days that followed fell into a quiet rhythm. Alara's ankle healed slowly, and Cale insisted she rest. He would leave at dawn to hunt or chop wood, and return at dusk, often with a rabbit for their dinner or a handful of wild berries. He taught her about the mountains, the names of the plants, the tracks of the animals. He showed her how to whittle small figures from scraps of wood, and she discovered a talent she never knew she had. She, in turn, began to transform the small cabin into a home. While he was out, she would sweep the floors, mend his clothes with a needle and thread she found, and have a warm meal waiting when he returned. She learned to cook with the ingredients the forest provided, her simple meals a welcome comfort for the solitary man. A silent understanding grew between them. They were two lonely souls who had found companionship in the most unexpected of circumstances. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Cale finally asked about her past. Hesitantly, Alara told him everything about her family, the limp being sold, and the traitor. She spoke a flat, emotionless tone, as if reciting someone else's story. When she finished, she braced herself for pity or disgust. Instead, Cale just nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "Family isn't always the blood you're born with," he said softly. "It's the people who build a roof over your head, not the ones who sell you from under it." His words were a balm to her wounded spirit. He didn't see her as useless or broken. He saw her. As the weeks turned into a month, Alara's ankle healed completely. She could walk without pain, her limp no more than a slight, familiar rhythm in her step. She was no longer the frail, frightened girl who had been abandoned in the woods. The mountain air had put color in her cheeks, and Cale's quiet acceptance had given her a strength she never knew she possessed. The thought of leaving the cabin, of going back to a world that had rejected her, filled her with a new kind of ephatos. One day, Cale returned from the forest not with game, but with his arms full of wildflowers' vibrant blues, sunny yellows, and deep purples. He stood awkwardly before her, a blush salutes his weathered cheeks. "Alara," he began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "This cabin is small, but the mountain is large. There's more than enough room for two." He took a deep breath. "I know I don't have much to offer. Just this cabin, my protection, and my heart. I've been alone a long time. I didn't realize how lonely I was until you came." He looked at her, his eyes for the first time. "I want to build you a new life here, with me, if you'll have me." Thank you so much for watching. This is just the beginning of Alara and Cale's story. What will she decide? Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. We love having you here, and we'll see you in the next video.